After years of having a middling rushing attack, the New Orleans Saints run game is set for a revival in 2025, and it's all because of one simple rule. The Saints won't put their players in positions that suck. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, whoever wins the quarterback battle, I think all Saints fans are going to be able to agree on one thing. And one coach, TJ Paganetti, could be the New Orleans Saints' secret to a successful run game. We got all that for you on today's episode. We appreciate you, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He may not be often interviewed. He may not be a coach that's thrust out into the front of every press conference or anything like that, or celebration, whatever it might be. But TJ Paganetti could be the New Orleans Saints' biggest hire on the offensive side of the football outside of Kellen Moore because of what he has shown in terms of his track record to be able to do when it comes to the run game. I had a great conversation with TJ on Thursday after OTAs. I wanted to bring a little bit of our conversation to you just in terms of my highlights of that conversation and why you should be excited about what a guy like Coach Paganetti brings to this New Orleans Saints team. First of all, I should mention that this is only his second NFL coaching landing place, the New Orleans Saints, but he has been in the NFL for basically around a decade. He arrived in Philadelphia in 2013 following Chip Kelly from his days at Oregon over to Philly, took another stint with Oregon 2015, 2016 as a graduate assistant, but then returned to the Philadelphia Eagles after that. And every single year that TJ Paganetti has been close to the Philadelphia Eagles run game, with the exception of 2018 and 2019, the Eagles were a top 10 rushing team. And 2019, they were number 11. And that was after they had flipped their injured running backs room for 2018 into a brand new room, signing Jordan Howard, going out there and drafting Miles Sanders, grabbing Boston Scott as well. So that was when they started to get back on their upward trajectory. Every other time that this guy has been around a run game in the NFL, it's been a top 10 run game. And so the New Orleans Saints, who have been kind of in the middle of the pack or in kind of the 21, 22, 23 ranking area since 2020, where they were the number 6 rushing attack in the NFL, have been this sort of middling rushing attack. They were about middle of the pack last year, 14th overall in terms of rushing yards, 15th in terms of rushing touchdowns. Well, now with Kellen Moore and TJ Paganetti being back together here in New Orleans, two coming over from Philadelphia last year, which rushed for over 3,000 yards as a team, the second most rushing yards of any team in the NFL behind just Baltimore, there's a lot of hope that this New Orleans Saints rushing attack, led by Alvin Kamara, but also including rookie Devin Neal, taking a look at guys like Kendre Miller, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who could see larger roles in this rushing attack as well. Now there's some hope for this rushing attack to take a massive step forward. And it all comes down to pretty simple principles. Like, some of the things that I'm about to say now are going to sound like common sense. And I do think that that's important, because for a long time, things haven't often felt like common sense when it comes to what the Saints are doing on the field and all these other things. Things have felt complex, needed to be dialed back, needed to be simplified, all these other things. You've heard that criticism of the Saints offenses of the past. Well, now things just kind of feel like they're achievable for this team. And I don't mean that in a rudimentary way. I mean that because the way that this coaching staff is going about things just makes sense. I'll tell you one of my favorite quotes that he said, and it goes right along with this. He said, "We do things that make sense and are fair to the players. We don't put them in positions that suck." Pretty simple, right? What does he mean by putting players in positions that suck? Well, one of the other things that he talked about was self-scouting. Self-scouting meaning that him and the coaching staff come together each week and say, let's take a look at what didn't work and why it didn't work. Instead of putting all the blame on the players, where could we potentially be at fault as a coaching staff is part of what it is that he looks at. And if in any of those situations, he finds a player that, quote, and the guy can't do the certain thing on a certain play, then don't ask him to do it. You run a different play. It's just that simple, unquote, is what he said. I love sort of the simplified nature of all of this. Like, this is very simple, and this is one of those things that just makes sense. I'm going to keep saying that about this New Orleans Saints offense probably throughout the season as well. It's like we're looking at film and we're breaking down what it is that they're doing and everything like that. Like, they're just doing common sense things. And the idea of self-scouting means a lot to the players as well. I asked Taliesin Fuanga about it, the New Orleans Saints offensive lineman, who, of course, was with a different system last year and is with a new system this year. And when it comes to sort of the self-scouting and doing all those things, he said that that's something that means a lot to the players. He said, quote, it's a big help for us. One of the things that he also said was that maybe it's a bad call or whatever. If they own up to that, then that's great. It's not always just on the players, even though they're the ones that are out on the field. And we saw a lot of finger pointing over the course of the past couple of years in particular. And trust me, there was a lot of finger pointing behind the scenes as well. I can tell you that. And so to just kind of see the way that everybody's willing to take some, and this has been a big word in New Orleans over the course of the past few years, here it goes, accountability in terms of their contributions to what's not going right, to see that coming from both the coaching staff and the player personnel, I think that goes a long way. I asked one other player, Jake Stoll, the tight end, who was with the Philadelphia Eagles, with TJ Paganetti, with Kellen Moore, with Doug Nussmeier, all last year in Philadelphia, and had spent additional time with Paganetti before that as he was assistant tight ends coach at one point over in Philadelphia. And here's what he had to say about him. He's just a phenomenal offensive mind, he said. I think that's what makes him so great. And he creates great relationships with the players. Then he went on to talk about how much they love being in the same room with him over in Philly. But he says, so he does a great job of mixing with the players and still using his knowledge to the best of his ability. So he checks a couple of boxes here. One, player culture, connection between the coaching staff and the player, and being a brilliant offensive mind, which is something that we have certainly seen in his track record, something that you've seen with Kellen Moore, and something that you're hoping ends up creating even more opportunities here in New Orleans. He said that the goal of the rushing game is super simple. You want to create gaps and you want to hit home runs. And so expect that to be the goal here in New Orleans. We'll come back to this conversation a little bit more in a later episode where we're going to break down how the Saints are going to create those gaps, how the Saints are going to create those run plays. But I'll tell you, again, the common sense side of it is simple. Just don't put them in positions that suck. Coming up next, no matter who wins the quarterback conversation or competition, I think all Saints fans will be able to agree on one thing. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing as each of the conference championships continue and roll along, and the Indiana Pacers keep surprising everyone. Another big win for Indiana. Tonight, we got the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road as road favorites by 2.5 points going up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you're a first-time customer, it's a great time to get in over on FanDuel. You feel really good about one of these teams, you can place your first $5 bet on them. If they win, then you get $200 in bonus bets right away. That's bonus bets that you can then use on odds, lines, and props as you're used to. But beyond those player props, you can also get in the same game parlays, live betting, and much more. All you got to do as a first-time customer over at FanDuel.com is win your first $5 bet, and that's $200 that's coming your way. So go and check them out today over at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Oh, no matter what happens and who wins the quarterback competition for the New Orleans Saints, I think every Saints fan can agree on at least one principle in the matter. Pick the best player. Whoever deserves the opportunity should win the opportunity. And I think whoever deserves and wins that opportunity should be allotted the patience to see that opportunity out for as long as possible. Not 3 or 4 games worth of an opportunity, but a real stretch, right? Look, the Saints, no matter who they pick as their starting quarterback, they have a tough opening stretch of their season. At home against up against Arizona, at home against the San Francisco 49ers, on the road to Seattle, on the road to Buffalo, and then back at home against the New York Giants. New York Giants feel like a possible winnable game. The Cardinals feel like a winnable game, and San Francisco feels like a winnable game, but still tough competition across the board there with the exception of the Giants. And so I don't think that any one player should be given a 4-game stretch at the beginning of the season. I think that that's an unfair situation to be in. But I do think that the Saints should be patient. And I do think that the Saints should simply pick the best player that wins out in the competition. Doesn't matter how long they've been around, doesn't matter how highly they were drafted, all those other things. I do think that those things will matter because those things matter in the NFL. And I do think that investment matters. I do think that money matters for them. I get all of that. But simply picking the best player is the best way to go in this situation. And it's going to be hard to push back against the idea that, like, yeah, look, there's going to be a favorite. Somebody was handpicked. Somebody was drafted higher and all those other things. I get it. But we live in a world right now, in an NFL world right now, where the quarterback conversation is so allied all the time, right? Like everybody gets behind one guy and that one guy's good and everybody else is trash. And like, that's the way that these conversations go all the time. I like my guy, your guy sucks. I like my guy, your guy sucks. And that's not actually what the conversation is. These guys are playing for the same team. They play for the same team. Like people should be rooting for the team, or people are more often rooting for the team than they are rooting for the individual player. And sometimes, we think that one player might be better than the other, but we don't really know until anybody hits the field and all those other things. And so regardless of who wins this quarterback competition, whether it's Spencer Rattler, whether it's Tyler Shough, whether it's Jake Haener, and I know like I'm including Jake Haener into the conversation because the Saints are including Jake Haener into the conversation, but I agree that the conversation is really in between Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler. And I'll sit here every day that I talk about these players, and I will make sure that I mention the context that Spencer Rattler has more NFL experience, also actually has more collegiate experience as well. What do you mean, Ross? Tyler Shough spent 7 years in the NFL, in college. Yeah, he did. But Spencer Rattler also took 600 plus more snaps and had 300 plus more passing attempts in his collegiate 5 years than Tyler Shough had in his collegiate 7 years. So really experience even from college to the NFL, Spencer Rattler has an advantage, has the edge in that case. But by being the handpicked, highly drafted player, Tyler Shough is going to be a guy that's going to have a bit of a leg up in that part of the conversation. And when you're a head coach and you're trying to make the right decisions, you're more often to make your decisions than you are to make the last regime's decisions. And so those things are all going to factor in. But really, I think what we can all agree with is that what the Saints should simply do, even with that context in mind, is pick the player that performs the best. Plain and simple. We talked all about common sense, doing what makes sense in the run game, putting players in positions that don't suck, all those other things. In the run game should be just as important, if not more important, when it comes to quarterback. So there should be a common sense decision. And I think that's something that everybody can gather around. Doesn't matter if somebody believes that this player is that or that this player is this. Or because they believe that this player is that, then they feel that they must believe that this other player is this, right? And that you kind of have to look at everything from this sort of juxtaposed, sort of diametrically opposed perspective. And that's not always the case. The fact of the matter is that, like, maybe none of these guys suck. It's not that only one can be good. They can all be good options for different reasons. And so as long as the New Orleans Saints are making the decision that makes the most sense, making the common sense decision, making the decision that allows them to put a guy in position, then I think that you're in a pretty solid place if you're the New Orleans Saints. No one's expecting this team to go on a Super Bowl run in 2025. I mean, the team has to believe that, sure, but like that's not the expectation publicly. When I talk to people on the street about the New Orleans Saints, which is very different than like the I'm behind social media avatar type of a situation. Those conversations are all very different in that way. And that's fine. Like you need dissenting opinions and all these other things. But when you talk to the people of New Orleans in New Orleans, you talk to Saints fans in person, they're just glad that like things are changing. Like most people are just glad. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Like most fans are just glad Derek Carr is gone. And most fans are just glad that Dennis Allen's not the head coach anymore. And so they're excited about Kellen Moore. They're excited about these young quarterbacks, but they're equally excited about what isn't any longer as they are excited about what is going to be. But that's the key. It's about what's going to be, not what is right now. This is a multi-year process for the New Orleans Saints. This is a full-on, they're not going to say this. I'm going to say it. They might not like me saying it. That's okay. again, dissenting opinions are healthy. They're in a rebuild. Like, I'll fully say it. Like, anytime you're having a quarterback competition, you're changing quarterbacks, you're changing your offensive scheme, you have a new head coach, you're rebuilding your roster, you brought in a 9-person draft class, an 11-person undrafted free agent class. Everybody's job is being evaluated. Nobody's fully settled into a starting position outside of like a handful of players. That all sounds like a rebuild. If it sounds like a rebuild, looks like a rebuild, it's probably a rebuild, right? And that's okay. That's a fine place to be at this point. Like, the Saints just had their Hall of Fame quarterback retire 5 years ago. They had their future Hall of Fame head coach leave the year after that to take a year off before taking a job with another organization. They made a bad choice in terms of head coach at Dennis Allen, and they made a bad choice in terms of quarterback that Dennis Allen selected in Derek Carr. None of it worked. So now you're having a rebound from all of that, and that is tumultuous. That's a lot of stuff. Quarterback, head coach. They've started all these other quarterbacks since the Drew Brees days, and like barely any of them win games and all these other things. Like, it has been a tough few years for the New Orleans Saints. And so it's okay to enter a season and go, the expectation is building for the future. Finding success now is a part of that, right? Trying to be as successful as you can at this moment is great. But a 5 or 6 win season is not going to be a disappointment here. So making the decision around the quarterback should be about what's going to give them the best possible outlook for their future. And if they can pick that player, then I think everyone can agree that it would be the right choice. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, I want to dive further into this run game. What is it that Kellen Moore's run game looks like? And how is it that they create those home run plays and create those gaps? We're going to dive into a little bit of it in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.